Hi everyone and welcome to the UB Hair Esteems project. Today we have Korina Holmes.
No.
Okay.
We only just started recording.
Okay. 3, 2. My mouth feels a bit weird now. Just when I'm starting to talk. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Zina and I'm the founder of UB Hair. Today we're talking with Korina Holmes, who is a lawyer and part of the Women's Equality Party, about hair. And she is going to talk to us a little bit about hair discrimination, her experiences, and her journey. I think it's really important that we see amazing Black women in successful jobs talking about, their kind of experiences as well. So, Korina.
Thank you very much.
There we go.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about it's a talk about microaggressions, but it's framed around the Black hair care market and how it exists in the UK. So I originally called it why Black women should take over the hair care market in the UK, and I've changed the name now and it's called This Is Not About Hair, and it's about equal enterprise and the Black hair care market. So I'm going to try and share my screen, so hopefully you'll be able to see. Bear with me. Okay. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, can see
Here we go. So this is not about hair. Well, as you know, it's an often quoted statistic that Black women spend 6 times more on their hair than their white counterparts in the UK. So this disparity sounds quite unbelievable, but for anyone like Zina, who's ever dealt with Afro hair, it's no surprise whatsoever. For me, like many other Black and mixed race women, my hair was a large focus of my childhood. And it didn't help that I grew up I was born in 1987 to a Black Barbadian father and a very English white mother. And I was born in the very white town of Chester. So I grew up in a household with my 2 sisters, and each of us had thick, curly hair, and a lot of it. And my mum really, really struggled with our hair. So each of our hair required about 2 hours a week of care, intense detangling, moisture treatments, twisting, braiding, and protective styling. And in the winters, our hair would become dry and it would become brittle and break. And I was convinced that my hair just didn't grow. And there was no professional help either. So Chester had no Black hair salons, and white hairdressers would just refuse to serve us because they weren't trained in Afro hair. And back then, there was no YouTube, there were no hair care blogs, there was no UB Hair. And in desperation, my mum would tape The Cosby Show and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and pause it on images of Rudy Huxtable, so that she could learn how to twist, and Hilary Banks for, how to rock a hat with a fro. And there were no shops that sold suitable products either. We had Boots and Superdrug, and that was it. And all they stocked for Afro hair was relaxer. And for anybody who doesn't know what relaxer is, it's a vicious ammonia-based formula designed to permanently straighten Afro hair. It was a sort of reverse perm, only stronger and more painful. When my dad would visit family members in the US or Barbados, he'd return with family-sized bottles of S-Curl, which is a wet look jerry curl forming product that never dried and left us looking like Michael Jackson and Billie Jean on a good day, or Lionel Richie on a bad one. So years later, I moved to London for law school, and then I took up a training contract in a law firm in the city. And that's when I really had my first taste of multicultural living. So I landed in Brixton, where I still live to this day. And as many of you'll know, South London, Lambeth, Southwark and Lewisham is the blackest area of the UK. So over a quarter of us living in each of these boroughs is black. And this doesn't account for those that identify as mixed race, like myself. So I arrived in London and I was ready. I was ready to explore the shops, seek advice from my sisters, fill my head with knowledge and fill my cupboards with products. I was hungry to see enterprising black women in their element and get their wisdom on my hair. So I strolled around Brixton Market, a hub of Afro-Caribbean London, down Electric Avenue, Atlantic Road and back through Market Row. And there were countless shops to choose from. But what struck me as I walked around was this. In not one of these shops did I see a black woman working. A 2014 study found that in the UK, black women account for 80% of total hair product sales. That's £900 million spent by black women on hair products in the UK annually. So what an incredible source of potential wealth and consumer spend for our community. In Brixton alone, there are black hair product shops everywhere you look, although they're now nestled amongst expensive coffee shops and foodie pop-ups. But the bizarre reality is that the UK's black hair care retail market is actually owned and operated by South Asian men. Black women, black hair salons, hair braiders, barbers, wigs and weave makers all purchase their hair and their products from men who don't use them or understand the products that they're selling. So this is Team of the Week in a Dalston branch of one of the most well-known black hair shops in London. So why do South Asian men and not black women dominate this market? Well, it hasn't always been this way. So back in the 1960s, Jamaican-born Len Dyke and Dudley Dryden saw a gap in the market for the growing Windrush generation and turned their record shop and travel agency into a hair and beauty business catering to black communities. Dyke and Dryden were so successful that they were able to expand, open multiple branches and even their own warehouses, so they could compete successfully internationally. After a while, they switched their business to manufacturing, so they started creating their own black hair products, and they became the first company in Europe to do so. The manufacturing business was eventually overwhelmed by American competitors, and Dyke and Dryden eventually sold out to an American company in the 1990s, and they made $1 million. So when they sold out, the black hair care market became an import industry, essentially, because there were very few homegrown products. And South Asian businesses had the retail infrastructure so that they were able to buy in bulk, monopolise the market and drive out competitors. The biggest one of these, as many will know, is Pax Cosmetics, and its dominance on the high street, in wholesale and online has quashed competitors. Their CEO can be seen on Instagram flying around in private jets, but his customers, myself included, have to cope with less glamorous experiences. Black women in the UK are used to the surreal experience of asking for advice on the best type of edge control from a man who neither uses it nor has any interest in learning what it's for. We get used to being followed around the aisles by watchful eyes and frequently accused of stealing. I'm a commercial lawyer living in London in 2021, and yet my everyday experience of shopping for shampoo is filled with racial tension and anxiety. We get used to relaxers being placed in our hands when we asked for conditioner. We get used to poor safety standards and dubiously sourced products from far-flung countries. We all get used to this. But there are signs of hope. Sandra Brown Pinnock decided to take matters into her own hands and hit headlines and made history when she opened the first branch of Sandy's in Lewisham, one of the first black women to own an Afro supply store in the UK. I understand that now this has gone strictly online due to COVID. But up until 2020, it was the only Black-owned hair and beauty supplier in South East London. Peckham has also a fantastic experiment which is thriving in supporting Black female business. Peckham Palms, which recently opened to provide a hub of Black female-owned beauty businesses, specifically designed to support London's lucrative afro hair and beauty industry, puts the power back into the hands of Black communities and creates new opportunities for women to work collaboratively and thrive together. So these are predominantly braiders and hairdressers who, needless to say, rely on shops like Pax for supplies. But of course, as every Black woman knows, hair is never just about hair. Hair is always about power. The story of hair and this industry is the story of the exploitation of Black women and all those that face intersectional oppression. So I began talking with a statistic. Black women spend 6 times more on their hair than their white counterparts. And this isn't a simple question of vanity. This staggering spend gap is identity politics in play, and it goes way beyond the fact that wearing our hair in its natural form takes way more care and attention than for women of other races. It's not that simple. So unacceptable or unprofessional has natural afro hair been in British society that we've been conditioned to believe that wearing our hair the way it grows out of our heads is a political statement. The proper thing to do, we're told, is to westernise with waves, wigs and chemical straighteners. And those of us who do choose to go natural better expect some groping. Involuntary, non-consensual touching of our hair from people, strangers, who will never ask before they touch. And if they did ask, my response would always be, no, you can't touch my hair, but you can kiss my ass. Now, we may not be able to reverse hundreds of years of social conditioning, but it's my strong belief that we should at least be benefiting financially from it. The ethnicity pay gap and gender pay gap leave Black women at the bottom of the food chain. Benefit cuts and tax changes have meant Black women in the poorest households will lose on average 14% of their income, according to a Runnymede Trust report. And we all know that Black women and ethnic minorities make up the largest amount of people who provide care services in London alone. And this is an area which has been on the front lines during COVID. We as Black women must start taking ownership of our own economy. One of the best options is to turn to Black British brands online that are catering to our natural hair and beauty needs. We must start supporting the Black women entrepreneurs that are trying to reclaim the Black beauty market for our communities. I repeat, this is not about hair. This is about power. We as Black women must start taking ownership of our own economy. Our status as a community will always depend in the end on our ability to sustain our basic needs. If we're to take our full political and economic place in Britain, we need to get involved, get stuck in, work hard, along with the wider community to build Black enterprise. No one else will do it for us. This is not about hair, but unless we do it for ourselves, someone will do it for us. Arthur Ashe, the first and only Black man to win the singles at Wimbledon, famously said, "You must start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can." And I don't know a single Black woman who couldn't run a Black hair shop or an advisory service, even a small one on Instagram or online. So to all my sisters out there, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Thank you.
I feel like that was amazing. Thank you so much. So powerful.
Thank you. Am I still presenting? Can I stop?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Korina. That was incredible. Thank you for sharing your story, and you touched on some incredible points there. I'd love to delve a little bit deeper into that story, your story. You spoke quite heavily about, you know, when you were in Leeds and not Leeds, sorry, in Chester, definitely Chester.
Once you go above the M25, only from London.
No, look, it's not all the same. It's not all the same. I was just talking to someone about Leeds. That's probably why. But you know, about Chester and, you know, with your father's roots and coming back with you know, all these things to put in your hair. What was your hair journey like with your family? How was that relationship with your mum?
My mum was really forward thinking, and I have to put it to her, like, she had nothing to go on. Like, we were, you know, like I say, there was no YouTube. I mean, I had to learn how to look after my own hair, and there was no internet. I'm not old. She used the tried and tested route, and like, not the tried and tested route. She would just test it, see if it worked, trial and error. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. If it didn't, she would try something else. And she came up with this amazing, like, she had a bottle of water that she would put water and conditioner in, and she'd mix it together, and she would spray it on our hair to brush it in the morning. And it was like gold dust. Like, she just came up with that herself. She's like, right, this hair, it does not work. You can't brush it dry. Like, she tried it, didn't work. You have to brush it wet, and even better, brush it with conditioner. And I can't believe she came up with that, because it took me, like, because I started off with obviously natural hair, and then I think when I was about 13 I relaxed it, and then I learned how to actually do my hair, because my mum was doing my hair up until I was 13, sadly. And then relaxed it, learned how to deal with it straight, and then wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was like, okay, now I need to learn how to do my own natural hair. And I went through everything, went all over the blogs, and ended up using the same formula that my mum had taught herself, like, in the 80s.
See, that's amazing. And also, you've done your hair today, as I can see. It looks lovely. That's a really good point about you know, education around hair, right? So your mum probably didn't know, but if you have you know, usually the tighter the curl, the lower the porosity, so hair actually doesn't absorb as much water. Like, I guess, like the tighter the curl, and that's due to the fact that, you know, it's meant to keep you cool. And you know, obviously our hair is meant to be for, like, the hot sun, so you know, when you're sweating and things like that, it's meant to kind of sit on the top, take a bit more time to soak in, so that, you know, you can keep your body cool. So there is a reason why there's a
science behind it.
Yeah, there always is a science behind it. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily know that, which then feeds into, you know, if you don't necessarily know how powerful and how wonderful your hair is, it then creates negative ideas of what beauty is meant to be. But I know you've started doing your own hair. Like, how long did it take you to do it today?
Okay, so I've twisted in some hair here, but I had a 3-hour call this morning with our solicitors. So we were on, we every quarter we have a 3-hour call where we talk about what litigation we've got outstanding, and I just said hi in the morning with, like, a scarf on, and then I turned my video off and I spoke to them the whole time doing my hair. So it took me probably about two hours really, and then with a couple of cups of coffee in between. But I have to say, like, this whole working from home is really working for my hair. And it's just, you know, I've never shied away from wearing my hair in any form to work. You know, I used to work in a very conservative law firm in the city, and I always had, like, my afro. I was never like, I straightened it, like, when I was a trainee, and then I just stopped straightening it. But I still have in the back of my mind, there are some styles I just can't go to work with, you know. And I you know, I'm 33 and I'm very outspoken about hair discrimination. It still is in there, and, you know, I would love for it to not be there, but it's just there. So I mean, obviously I'm not going to come to work with, like, half my hair done, the other half out and just like
Wow. Hey guys, yeah. Actually, this is a really good point. Actually, what was your experience like working in corporate? I mean, you still work corporate, but you know, when you first kind of entered the space of law, what was your experience?
Yeah, so the difference between what I did then and what I do now is I was in private practice before, and now I work in-house for a corporation, for a company, and it's a little bit more relaxed because I'm not surrounded by lawyers all the time. But when I was in private practice, I specifically worked in a litigation department, so we were in and out of court, and it's traditionally a lot more conservative. And I would get constant comments on my hair, and I think like I'm pretty confident when it comes to like just speaking my mind, and I just knew that I wasn't going to let it get me down. And that phrase that I said in my talk about it being a political statement, as much as it was just me, I'm quite lazy. Like my main reason for going natural was because when I go to the gym, I don't want to have to re-straighten my hair afterwards. I want to just be able to put it up in one. But really a lot of it was, you know, me wanting to not conform to a white norm of beauty. And the more comments I got, it was almost more like, you know, I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But for anybody who doesn't have this like rebel in them, that would make them shy away from like working in a conservative law firm. And there are some people that I know, like women of colour, who were a lot younger than me, that just would not take the fight. They didn't want to have that conversation. I mean, I remember one time we had a lot of building noise going on in the office next to us, and I was in the photocopy room, and one of the senior lawyers that came in and was like, "Is that noise really, really bothering you?" And I was like, "Oh no, I can barely hear it." And he goes, "Oh, I thought that's why you're wearing your hair like that, because, you know, it's earmuffs to prevent you from hearing all that building noise." And I was like, "No, it's just tight goes up my head."
What did you do in that instance? Like, was there anything that you could say to any senior members of staff, or and if you had, what were the kind of repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, I just said, "No, that's just how it grows out my head," and then walked out. Like, and I didn't really think about it, and then I was like, "Hold on, that's not cool. Like, that isn't a comment that he should have made at all." But I just didn't think to raise it. I mean, and then what really used to get me was there was this other lawyer in my team who was like, you know, his dad had money and whatever, and he'd gone to Oxbridge or whatever, and he's a white male essentially, who used to wear his hair long, and he would compare the comments on his hair being long to the comments I was getting on my hair, and I was like, no, it's not the same.
Really is not the
same. There's no systemic racism coming around to the, you know, the comments that are coming out between you and your hair. But I mean, I never felt like there would be repercussions, but I know that there are you know, junior lawyers that were, you know, a lot younger than me and less confident, that did feel like they couldn't come to work in the way that they couldn't bring their whole self to work in a way. And I guess I was partly sort of standing up for them and doing like, yes, you can, because I do, and check out my like brightly coloured outfit and my Afrocentric necklaces. So yeah, I don't think there would. This may be me being naive, but I think I was loud enough that, you know, they knew that I would kick off if they said anything to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think for a lot of especially young women that are watching this, they don't always have that same luxury. We've seen, you know, hundreds of girls being suspended from school, you know, despite being, especially with Black and mixed race girls being the highest achievers in school, actually being the ones that are being told that they could no longer come into school because of their hair. And that happened to me. You know, I'm from the borough of Lewisham, but my school was in Greenwich, so don't worry. And you know, that did happen to me, and I almost got suspended because I had my hair in braids. And you know, it wasn't until like my mum came in and really fought my corner, they then kind of backed up and recognized that this, you know, this was wrong. But the kind of social implications that has on on someone at such a young age. You know, I was like 12 or maybe even 13. I didn't get braids again for at least another like 12 years.
Yeah.
You know, that has a long lasting effect. That kind of trauma is not great. I mean, what kind of advice would you give to a young girl maybe watching this on ways in which they can handle something like this if this was ever to come about?
Yeah, so I think like my main advice, and this is so hard to do, so I don't know how. I mean, I've never managed to do it, but my main advice would be, okay, breathe. If you get a comment or somebody says something to you, breathe, take a deep breath, and then take your emotions out of it and apply common sense. As in, just like my response to my boss in that situation was, this is how I'm wearing my hair like this because this is how it grows out of my head, right? So my emotional response would have been like, how dare you make that comment to me? Do you know what I go through? But I had to take a step back and just go, look, this is the common sense. I can't wear my hair any other way than how it grows out of my head. What do you expect from me? And then in the same situation with braids, like it took me a long time to be like confident enough to wear braids to work. And then when I started wearing them, I was like, this saves so much time in the morning. My hair is very, very fragile in the winter and I can't wear it naturally because it will just break and it won't grow. And yeah, and it's just, for me, it's the common sense response. Why do I wear my hair like this? Because I have to, or because it makes more sense. So I think like my main tip for anyone who is concerned or has a comment thrown at them at school or at work is take a step back, breathe, and then respond, because the emotional response almost never gets you anywhere.
Yeah.
And underneath the emotional response, you will find the logical response, and you can't argue with the logical response, because when it comes down to it, it's systemic racism. That's always the answer.
It's true. It's true.
When it comes down to it, why should I wear my hair differently? Why can't I wear my hair naturally when she can? Because of systemic racism.
Yeah. And if someone comes into school or work with like different color hair and they don't get the same, they say it's natural colors, but Black people can be born with blonde hair too and blue eyes.
Exactly.
So I think that there's double standards, definitely. So obviously
there is double standards. It's like, okay, you have to have natural colored hair. You have to have natural color hair. Fair enough. Maybe this blonde hair color is not my natural color, but is straight my natural texture? Why does it have to be just natural color when it can't be natural texture? It doesn't make any sense. So that's like, what is the logic behind it?
Absolutely. I know that, and also, when you're talking about logic, it really makes a lot of sense. And I know that your talents don't just lie in being a lawyer. You are part of the Women's Equality Party. How did that come about? And what was your experience in making a decision to join from the party?
Well, I mean, that's an excellent segue, because it is literally logic and common sense. So it came about when I'm a mum. I have a 4, nearly 5-year-old, which is crazy. But when he was a baby, I was I used to take the bus down Brixton Hill to drop him off at nursery and then get on the tube to go to work. And every morning I would be fighting with like 5 other mums for the 2 buggy spaces on the bus so that I could get there during rush hour. And you have to obviously get off when somebody who's a wheelchair user needs it. And I was just like, this makes no sense. Why are there no more buggy spaces? Why is the TfL not set up for mums? Because they assume mums don't go to work, I guess. And then that year, I think the Women's Equality Party was only a year old, and they were campaigning for the Greater London Assembly, and one of their key campaign things on a leaflet I saw was more buggy spaces on a bus, and I was like, that makes perfect sense. And it was all, and then when I looked deeper into it, all of their policy points were things that would just improve my life as a working mum. And I was like, and then I remember talking to like one of my friends who we really like bond over most political points, but he's a white male, and he said to me, well, you only want to vote for them because you're a mum now. And I was like, yeah. Like, the only reason you want to vote for any of your political parties is because you're a white male and they serve the white males. And so everything that they were putting out made sense. So then I found out that they had like a local branch that met on the road next to mine. I sort of fell into it that way. I just went along and I sat in a room full of like women, and for the first time I felt like I was being heard, and everything that in fact, it was almost like for the first time I had nothing to say because everyone else was saying the things I wanted to say. Yeah. And that never happens to me. So I just sort of fell into it, and then it grew from there. We're now 6 years old. In fact, today is our 6th birthday.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Happy birthday. It's a party.
Yeah, it's a Pisces, isn't it? So that means
yeah, the party's a Pisces.
Classic. But obviously it's International Women's Day, and you know your talk has been incredible. What kind of advice would you give to young people who want to get into I suppose law and politics? They go quite hand in hand. What would you say is the best way to kind of get into it and to make a change?
Yeah. So for me, with law, the best way to get into it is to just, there's so many different ways to practice law, and it's so easy, especially if you're going into certain universities or certain high schools, to just see one track. So just look at all of the different routes. Like, I didn't realize that immigration law was so fascinating until I met this woman on the bus on the way home from everything happens on the bus. I met this woman on the bus who had been working with like Windrush generation applicants, and just talking to her, she was really inspiring. So just like try and get as much exposure to different forms of lawyers as possible, and then figure out what's the right route for me, the right route for you, because you could end up in the worst like vocation just because that's all you know. And then with politics and how to make a change, that one's easy. Just what do you want to change and why, and then do it. So I always say the reason I'm involved in politics and the reason I'm so busy is because there's so many things that need changing, and I'm too impatient to wait for somebody else to do it. So I'd rather just do it, like either do it myself or be involved in the change, because at least I know it's moving forward. And there's so many ways to do it. And like I said at the end of my speech, like, start where you are, use what you have and do what you can. You don't have to be running for politics to be a politician. You can be posting the right things on social media, or talking to the right people, or just going to the right, like watching the right films, or talking to or stopping your like annoyingly racist uncle from saying the wrong things. Like, you're doing politics because you're changing society. So yeah, that's my main advice is, one, expose yourself to as many different possible areas of law as possible before you get into it. And with politics, just do whatever you can right now.
Amazing. Oh, wow. That was so inspirational. Thank you so much. I definitely resonate with what you said about, starting where you are and just go for it. If you want to change something, do something about it. That's why I started the petition, and that's why I started my business, because I recognize that so many people being left behind, and, it wasn't fair. Why is it one standard for, another person? And, I can't have my hair in braids. What? Like that? Yeah. How does that work? And just like the trauma that's kind of associated with it as well, and understanding the politics of power and play. And, sometimes, even though I did study politics at university, I recognized that the change wasn't really going to come from being like a typical politician, because it's very party politics based, but from actually starting from the ground up and getting people to see what is happening around, and educate them, and then make the change in that way. So this is amazing.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things that we really need to remember is that the law changes so much, is a lot slower to change than society. So the law is always trying to catch up with society. So it's never going to be, it's never, like, for example, the upskirting law that was changed last year, like, or a couple of years ago, it was, the fact that it was still legal to take photos of a woman's skirt was just not like known by anyone. Everyone was like, what? Of course that's illegal. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even a law until a essentially social media influencer almost realized it wasn't a law, got in touch with a lawyer who helped her to change the law, and then the two of them have made a change, and society was just like, oh yeah, now the law has caught up. So
it's crazy to think that was even legal in the first place. Like,
oh, don't get me started on things that are still legal.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a huge reflection of our society, I think.
Yeah.
And the wider context around the way in which society treat women. But I'm sure that is another conversation for another time. But I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and talking about your experiences and ways in which young people can get into this space. You're super inspirational, and it's not about hair. It's about power. It's about politics. It's about all the other things that come into play with that. And with that in mind, I'm going to just remind everyone to sign our petition to end hair discrimination in the UK. And also don't forget to register on UB Hair, on our UB Hair Instagram, for the app that we have coming out, which is meant to help and support local hairdressers and barbers, and also young people who are looking to get their hair done, who have afro textured hair. It's for everyone, but the people who will definitely benefit from it the most are the people with hair like you and I. So thank you so much, Korina, and hopefully everyone enjoys this talk.
Thank you.
I think we'll stop. Yeah. Bye.
All right, if I stop